Hello, my friends. Jacob's here one more time. Thank you for pressing the play button, for spending a little time with me. This is a very important story that's actually about to blow up. It has to do with my former employers over at Daystar television network. There's been an investigation that's going on. If you haven't seen the last couple of shows that I did, like this one, or this one, or this one, well, then you're missing out because they were great shows. The fact that now this case has been closed in regards to Joni Lamb, who I was the head writer for well over 7 years, worked for the company for quite a long time. I was her writer and I knew this family very well. So of course when the news broke, I was one of the few people that actually came out here and said this isn't in her character to cover something up like this because she loved her family so much. And the more I looked into the story which was filled with so many red flags and it was filled with so many holes that you'd really have to be someone who lacks critical thinking and just has an axe to grind to not say, you know, there are a bunch of influencers that are taking advantage of these two young parents that are being manipulated by fear and, well, some are even saying possibly greed or other things. But I'd like to just say that maybe sincerely they thought that there was a problem. I'd like to think that. I'd like to think that they weren't so horrible, that this was really all about the fact that Jonathan was no longer named to be the president and successor over at Daystar, and that all of this came out of kind of a little behind-the-scenes battle that was taking place between leadership. His mother and his wife and him.
They're really scary. They think horrible things.
No. That's not
I got you by the balls.
And other people see it. You see it in your eyes right now, and you look at him like you gave him a look.
I gave him a look of pity. Like I'm trying to, you're cornering him. This is so evil. What is happening?
No, what's evil is
and you're telling me that I've got him by the balls.
What's evil is you and the spirit that's driving you, and the things you've done, the things you said, the things you've written, the people that you've talked to, the people who've told me things you said that are disgusting.
Like what?
That is what evil.
Like what?
You know, Susie.
What? I don't.
You
Tell me.
know. Oh, please, don't even try it.
What are
okay?
this? Can you tell me what these things are?
No, I'm not, because you know what they are.
I have no
don't.
idea.
Jimmy, you were there in the meeting with the children. You heard what all she said. Yeah. You told me what she said.
Tell me some of the things.
We don't. Well, why do we have to repeat what you said? You know what you said.
And the young girl that is their child caught in the middle of it all. What they did, I was very clear about. I said that it was probably the absolute worst thing that they could do for their child, especially if this was the case, because of course, myself, I know something about child abuse. That's how I got custody of my children. My daughter, who was younger than she was at that age when supposedly something happened, started off, it was something that happened at the school, and then it kind of turned into, you know, her own uncle being some kind of a terrible monster who has his own family, by the way. His name's been slandered and everything else. They called him Pete, but it was very obvious to see who it was. This family, it was like a nuclear bomb of shame that blew up in their faces. All over, a bunch of influencers that sucked their teeth, in my opinion, into Jonathan and Susie Lamb and exploited this story for clicks. And a lot of them right now, even though the news is broken, that the Colleyville Police Department has dropped this was Daystar's media statement. I want to read this to you. Following a comprehensive investigation, Daystar learned through counsel today Colleyville Police Department has officially closed its investigation. No further action or charges into allegations of abuse involving a child in the Lamb family. The original police report filed several years ago alleged that an unidentified classmate child of the child committed the alleged abuse. In November of 2024, media reports surfaced falsely accusing another member of the Lamb family, identified as Pete. Now this comes out, and you would think that all of these influencers would say, oh, I am very sorry that I did this. But I got to tell you something, because this story with Daystar goes back to when I was let go, when I was fired. Right? So there's no reason why I should be taken up for Joni Lamb and the crew, even though I love him, right? Even though I love him, I got hooked into some kind of nonsense, other scandal that was going on at the time that I had nothing to do with, and I felt like I became the fallout of it, but I gave a warning. I sat down with Joni herself on last time I spoke to her in person, and I said, look, I have a feeling that things are going to get really bad unless things get better here. And in fact, I actually did a video titled The Fall of Saul right there. You'll see it starts off with a passage from 1 Samuel chapter 13, where Samuel says to Saul, you've done foolishly, your kingdom will no longer stand. Now, you've probably heard the tragic news that Marcus Lamb has passed away. His male heir would be Jonathan Lamb. The story of Saul, ironically, in that video, I was calling Marcus in a roundabout way Saul, and I was speaking metaphorically about Jonathan, not thinking that here we would be 5,050 days later, hearing the news about this scandal. 50-50 hindsight. It's very strange. That's when the video came out, my warning to them, where you better get it together. Otherwise, that video really shook me. But when I heard the news and when it broke, I was still puzzled because just 5 days earlier, I had felt like the whip was coming to the money changers' tables. And I'm not just calling Daystar the money changers, because you got to remember something. The temple of God and the outer court all have to do with us. I put out this test right here where you see the guy with the whip, because Wayne sent that to me, just thought it was cool, and I just said, oh, good grief, the whip is coming, and the whip certainly did. I said, this is a test. Soon to hear or see something like this. Think money changers' tables. 6 months exactly from the tables being flipped, we find this news of the Colleyville Police Department. It's over. The investigation is over. Now, at the same time this is happening with Daystar, news breaks of another person whose name is Daystar Peterson, otherwise known as Tony Lands. Tony Lands, Daystar Peterson, who's currently in prison for the shooting of Megan the Stallion. Well, Daystar Peterson, whose father named him after 2 Peter 1:19.
Daystar Peterson. This may seem not even to matter today, but it does to me. The reason why he bears the name Daystar is because I was scheduled to speak in a conference in Washington, D.C. I was up praying before that conference that I was supposed to speak at that evening. As I paced back and forth in my hotel suite praying, I began to quote the scripture from 2 Peter chapter 1, and it states, for you will do well to take heed as unto a light shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the day star arises in your heart. I didn't know whether it was a boy or girl in my late wife's womb, but I heard the Holy Spirit said to me, that is the name of your child.
2 Peter 1:19 is how the Daystar television network got its name. It's their founding principle.
Daystar
So at the same time
Peterson.
the Daystar television network is being released from this investigation and it's being closed, Daystar Peterson, both cases have the name Daystar and both have the name Peter, as the alleged abuser's name was Pete. That there is a divine connection here. One that speaks of resolution and reconciliation and a new light coming out of the darkness. What I learned early on with my daughter Shiloh was, well, you don't want to relitigate this stuff. And when they found out that the man that was around my children was not going to be in the picture anymore and was going to be not allowed near them, they said the best thing to do is not to relitigate it, not to go after it. And I believe that God would take care of the man. And guess what? God took care of the man. Yeah, you don't do horrible things and expect to get away with it. But we didn't relitigate it. We didn't take Shiloh. We didn't take her and then remind her and bring her to a therapist to get out of her what happened. You know why? Because we knew what happened, because she told us exactly who it was very, very clearly because she was having night terrors again and again and had to sleep with me for the first, until she was about 11 years old. She slept in the room on the floor on a bed next to me and Danielle because of all the stuff that happened to her as a child. Now, you got to understand something. There are parents that may fear something like this, but there are also parents that take this stuff and they use it and they weaponize it. Now, I'm not saying that that's what Susie and Jonathan did. I think that's what the influencers attached to them did. And that's why I put out my show, the very first show I put out. You see in the thumbnail, you see me in the background as the writer, Beauty from Ashes, because it was my hope back then with that video that I put out that I got a lot of hate for. A lot of hate for, ironically, because who am I to stick up for as if I was somehow taking up. You know what I was doing? I wasn't taking up for the establishment. What I was doing was I saw something that I knew didn't sit right. And I saw a lot of people in the name of Christ coming out and attacking and saying the most horrible things about a person they didn't even know. A person who passed 2 lie detector tests. Now a full investigation. There were so many red flags about this to begin with. First thing I did with my daughter, there was a medical exam. CPS was called. We did stuff. There was an order of protection put against the person. None of these things were done on that end. I'm not saying that they made it up, because I do know from hearing whispers that somebody put it in Susie's head that maybe this is, maybe she was really being abused, and maybe it was by this guy over here. And to think about what Rachel Lamb Brown and her husband, the little lambs, the little children, Jonathan, Rebecca and Rachel, I love these kids. Jonathan used to come into my office all the time. We talk all the time. Breaks my heart that now Susie, his wife, just blocked me. Because I'm looking at this as like, okay, well, the investigation was closed. That should give you some closure. But she wrote, and Jonathan wrote, Pete was not exonerated. The case is closed as a formality. That's not closed as a formality. It's closed. It wasn't a formality. It was closed. The case is closed. Till further evidence comes out, this is normal. This is how it works. This is not news. Don't fall for the lies. Hang on a second. A criminal investigation that was opened and closed because it had to do with a classmate, child, that was then reopened because of all the buzz and all the stir and all the nonsense. All these, magazines and these online podcasters, the Wake Up, Bake Up, Shake Up, at Julie Reach Royce. She's the reporter that came out with all these horrible things. At Laura Lim Thompson, this woman has been relentless about calling a man that she doesn't even know for a fact anything about this guy. And now the news comes out that he's been exonerated. And that's what it means until, of course, new evidence comes out. Well, yeah, of course. But, there isn't any. Unless, of course, you try to, convince the child to say something that she couldn't say right off the bat. Like my daughter had no problem saying it's this guy. How could he have a problem saying, oh, it's because it didn't happen, most likely. And that's what I believe to be true. I'm not saying that their fear and their worry and all that stuff, I'm not saying they don't actually believe it, because maybe they do. But it was very coincidental to me that Jonathan and Susie were more upset, it seemed, after all this stuff came out, that they were more upset with who their mother was marrying. All of this stuff just seemed so ridiculous to me that I couldn't believe how many Christian influencers, Christian, I use the word loosely, get latched onto this thing. And man, did they soak up all of these clicks and all these likes. One of them, who I actually think is a pretty good guy, one of the very few that didn't block me, because I was blocked by every single one of them just by asking questions. Yeah, so much for transparency, right off the bat. Susie writes, "This is not news. Let me explain. When a case has no new evidence, the police department will close it until new evidence or the victim speaks up." And then goes on to say, most children don't speak up until they are adults, so this process can take years. We already know all of this. When our child is ready to speak, she will, and the case will be wide open again. Till then, we rest and we trust God to bring justice. But this is important. Pete was, so they're continuing this story that he wasn't. My goodness gracious, a medical exam would have cleared things up very, very clearly with a child. A medical exam. That was the first thing we did. They didn't. Okay? She knows deep down. That's what my post was. I said, I think you know deep down. This should be good news for you. This should be good news for you. But all the influencers, what are they doing? Now they're coming out with stories about this guy. Oh, he propositioned someone. That's the latest thing from Lauren Lynn Thompson. Not like, hang on a second, a police department that's open had 2 investigations and closed them with no wrongdoing on both ends, has closed the case again. You'd think that they would maybe, report on this. And then maybe question the fact that, did it really happen? You look at everything and you add it all up. Because this kind of abuse shouldn't go unchecked. This kind of abuse shouldn't be something for influencers just pounce upon. They love it, they look for it, and it's like the most horrible news. As somebody that knows what it feels like as a parent, you feel helpless, you can't do right for your child. But do you know how many people lie and make it harder for the ones that actually are abused? I'm not saying she's lying, but I'm saying they all misled her. And I knew that this was going to turn. I knew that things were going to flip-flop and turn on their side. The last show that I did on this, I said the Daystar scandal is about to turn. As Samson tied the foxes' tails together, lit a fire for them to burn the field of the adulterous woman down, so too God is using foxes like Laura Lynn Thompson, Julie Royce, and all of these people. Marcus Rogers was the other one. He was the one that first came out. He's like, I'm exposing the Christian Illuminati. Until, of course, then he had the opportunity to go and sit down with Joni at Daystar and do a show where he realizes, oh my goodness. Well, he could have realized that if he actually looked at the evidence to begin with before casting such terrible shame on people. I feel like this is something personal to me because I love these people. I work for these people. They were literally like my family. I felt like that. But I also know that there was a lot of things wrong with the place, clearly. But the good news is the kingdom is given to another. And that's the irony, because right now Daystar is in Joni's hands. And I'll tell you one thing, Joni, of all the people that were there, and I was her writer, I loved her family. I really clicked with them. I felt like they really do have a good heart. And I always knew Joni to have a good heart. And I just reached out to her and I sent her an email just letting her know that I was glad that this, investigation was closed, and hopefully you could put some take some time off, or try to heal. Pray that Jonathan and Susie come to their minds. I hear that he is putting his house up for sale. This poor kid. What happens is the devil gets in your head, twists you around. You get a negative thought, and then you feel like you've said so many horrible things and you've done so many horrible things. Like when they at NRB just recently. It was just so crazy. These pack of wolves, it seemed. They all came and they were, going to Rachel. Now imagine Rachel, her husband, she's just married, just has two young kids, 2 young children. And they're calling her husband the worst thing, a child abuser, like the worst kind. Could you imagine? And on what grounds? No grounds. And all these influencers, they were there and they couldn't come. They were so excited to come over and start trouble, because that's exactly what you're supposed to do in the body of Christ today, right? Well, I said, this is what I consider to be a prophetic show. I said, Jonathan and Susie Lamb, they've been taken advantage of. Now you watch these watchdog Christians. They've sown some division. And I'm here, my hope is to offer some kind of reconciliation. It doesn't help anybody that a grandmother who loves her grandchildren so very much, which is very clear and evident, that they don't have a relationship. That's not good. I didn't speak to my mother for years. Actually, ironically, it was connected to me working with that Christian organization because, my mother had such an issue with it. We didn't speak for years until, of course, we resolved things because we were being dumb. Everybody says things that you take when you're going through a hard time and you're upset and you're depressed and you have people around you saying you should sue, you should record secretly your mother, you should have these meetings where you record her and prompt her to get her to say something so she looks bad. All of those tapes, all the stuff that they did, what did they get out of it? They got out of it a mother who really felt bad, a mother who was angry. Who wouldn't be angry? I'm sure she's done some wrong. And I know that this whole experience has definitely worked on everybody involved. I want to see Jonathan and Susie Lamb come to some kind of reconciling relationship with their mother. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see Jonathan and Susie get their jobs back. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see them working together again and realizing that you shouldn't allow rumor and you shouldn't allow influencers that are, making you feel like, oh, you're a star and inviting. They boosted. What's going to happen when Jonathan now has to sell his house? What are they going to do? What's Laura Lynn Thompson going to do for you, Jonathan and Susie? What's the unction going to do for you and Jonathan? What are they going to do for you? What are they going to do for you long run? Doesn't make any sense. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. Everybody messed up. Joni said herself that she knew she handled things in regards to this probably the wrong way. Marcus is now gone. There's a new kingdom, right? Now there's a new Daystar. It's time for them to come together. And I hope that they do. But we're going to have to see. And you know what? It's coming from me, who I would love to be on Daystar, right? They're not going to have me on. They don't even follow me on X. They don't even follow me. Here I come. I put myself out there all the time. Oh, dun, 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 I'm going to stick up for you all. Because, you got to do the right thing. God placed me there for a reason. He placed me there for a reason. It was strange. The fact that I had a feeling that this was going to happen one day. And then here it is. And now I see a chance for beauty for ashes. Like that very first thumbnail that I put. Beauty for ashes. Your relationship the way it was burnt down. The foxes burnt it down. Who are the foxes? Right? Samson tied the tail of the foxes together. Maybe the Lord did all this for a reason. He wants a new church. He wants a new day. He wants, morality and justice and peace and hope. He wants tolerance and patience and compassion. He wants a new Daystar. And now there's an opportunity for that to happen. And it can happen if you all just come together. Forgive each other. Let it go. Sometimes, in a fight, if you're not ready to really see what you've done wrong, just say sorry anyway. Say sorry anyway and just work on it. They should be happy. I pray to God that nothing did happen to their daughter. But I do know that their daughter is going to deal with a lot of stuff for the rest of her life now, because this has all been all over the internet. And there are a couple that people know, especially in the world of Christianity. So, the damage has been done, but I'm not so certain that the damage was really done by Joni Lamb or Pete, or I think the damage was done by all of these, these really just hateful Christian influencers. But you got to tell me in the comments section. And look, if you say, oh, I have rose-colored glasses on, and I have maybe because I love the family and everything, they fired me. Okay, I was fired. I loved working there. I loved that job so much, and nobody's calling to get me to come back either. So I'm not nobody's paying me for this video. In fact, I probably won't even get a thank you. Marcus Rogers can say, you're the worst, you're the Christian Illuminati, and then do a video, saying, oh, I looked at everything for the first time, and they're probably wrong. And they'll give him a shout out. Thank you, Marcus Rogers, thank you. Old Jacob, who was like the writer, helped you win an Emmy Award and everything. What do I get? What do I get? Hey, at least I get responses from people that I love over there still. So that's a good thing. All right. I love each and every one of you. Please do me a favor, support the channel. How do you do it? You can get some of the merch. You get I Am a Witness. All the links in the description. You get Teach Me the Truth. That's the most important thing. Teach me the truth no matter what the cost. Get yourself a mug. Get yourself any of the stuff. Anything. All the links are in the description below. You want to join up for Patreon? Join up for Patreon. And we'll get together. We're going to do the Zoom soon. All the links below. PayPal. Anything. Anything can help. Thank you for helping. I appreciate it, because I wouldn't be on here if it wasn't for all of you. I'm certainly not getting anything from any of them. All right, I love all of you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.